So there's our family. As you can see, the head of a dog in the front, in case you're wondering. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes and then Naomi is going to take over. So we were looking at Google Earth the other day to look at where we were originally from, as if we'd forgotten. And we saw our own backstory and the places that we came from. We were wondering, who would have thought that a boy from the suburbs of Oxford in England, which is where I am from, and a girl from the city of Liverpool, which is obviously the home of the Beatles, who would have thought that the two of us would have ended up in East Harlem in New York City? We never thought that we'd live anywhere other than Britain, in fact, and yet here we are in East Harlem in New York City. And I wanted to ask you, why did it all happen? It's really interesting that it's a time of the year when we think about the traveling of the three magi. It's Epiphany, right? If that's something that you do as a church calendar. So the story of the three magi following a star to Bethlehem is really appropriate for me as I think about my own journey. Just a few days ago, we were standing shortly after dusk at the edge of a field, and we looked up and saw in the early evening sky a light that was so bright that I was convinced it was actually an airplane. But it was the Bethlehem star. It was Jupiter, there in all its glory. And it was just so uncanny to be standing by an actual real donkey and seeing the Bethlehem star over the head of a real donkey without planning it. And, you know, when the story goes that when those three travelers from the east took the risk of going well beyond their comfort zone, going outside and beyond their home, they ended up at a stable, not a palace, in a village, an insignificant village, in fact, in the mountains above Jerusalem. Now, obviously their instinct took them to Jerusalem, which is where the palace is and where you'd expect to find a newborn king and where you'd expect to see a baby that was going to be crowned one day. But they were redirected. They were rerouted. And so they went 8 miles up into the mountains to this village, Bethlehem, which must have felt like going to the back of beyond. And after delivering their gifts of, as we all know, frankincense, gold, and myrrh, they were warned in a dream to go home by a different route, a different road. They were challenged and changed by the journey. So I think of myself at the end of that story, thinking of myself at this field with a donkey and a star, and thinking we are all called to live in some way today the ancient story. We are all called to that, to relive the ancient memories of the three magi in our own context. So here I went on a journey. In my head, I remembered myself as a 25-year-old back in 1990. In January of that year, a Wednesday morning at 5 in the morning, on a hill above a municipal garbage dump in the city of Juarez, Mexico, just as the sun began to rise and color the sky. And I witnessed hundreds of people shuffling up the dirt road to celebrate morning mass in a warehouse on the hilltop of that place. And as I watched, I was mesmerized by that spectacle of jubilant but incredibly poor people as they sang and then dropped to their knees to receive the communion wafer in total absorption and silence. And I was transfixed. I was transformed. I knew that my Bethlehem star had led me to that point as a 25-year-old just starting out in life. And it turned my world upside down. And it meant that I went home by a different road. I knew I wanted to live my life close to the poorest. And that's where I'd met Jesus in a very powerful way, and it had left its mark on me. It had been like a wound or a deep connection. So from then on, I tried to stay true to that urge to be alongside those who were marginalized and pushed to the edges in the city where I lived at that point, which was London, England. And then in 2014, we followed a call to come to New York, to pastor a church in the heart of East Harlem, which was a tiny congregation. It was no more than about a dozen people. But what appealed to us was that this congregation was deeply connected to people on the margins. It was a church which had been led and nurtured by residents of the public housing in that part of East Harlem. And we stood on the rooftop, and this wasn't quite us standing on a rooftop. This is Google Earth, thank you very much. We weren't that high up. We stood on the church rooftop and looked around and thought, this will do nicely. This is where I think Jesus is calling us to be. So living here for almost 7 years now, transitioning from church pastoring to being with Innerchange and becoming a missionary couple, it has really changed us. Just the day in, day out challenges of family life have shown us to be vulnerable with new friends and neighbours, and we've come under the leadership of others from the neighbourhood and been able to learn and listen. Now, as an activist, always dreaming big ideas of how things around here could be improved, I've had to learn humility and patience. Now, Naomi's got a more prominent role, and you'll hear about that in a minute, but for me, I have been trying to get alongside seniors living on very low income in local public housing. And that's what I have personally committed to. Being a good neighbour, being there alongside them for the long haul, to be a companion with them. Being a good neighbour. Jesus didn't act with presumption or pressure. He just slipped in alongside people. And that's how I would like it to be for me. That's really what fulfills me, to be alongside people who wouldn't be seen to be important or successful types, and to be faithful to them as a friend. And Innerchange, which is who we belong to, it's our Christian family, our Christian community, is not anything about being great, grand, massive. It's just really about the importance of gestures. It really helps us to value the importance of gestures. And at street level, in the blocks around us, a gesture, simply being a good neighbour, being an open, listening, and receptive person for Jesus' sake, is actually enough for right now. It's about being companions and living lives that are reorganized in order to be open. That's why the first image was open your heart. Having an open home, being a bit generous, or a lot generous, demonstrating really, really down-to-earth love for Jesus' sake among the neighbours who live within 5 minutes from our front door. Innerchange, that's who we are part of, and that's the story that I brought. And now it's Naomi's chance to impress you with beautiful, colourful images.
He always does this. He kind of bigs me up, and he doesn't realise as an introvert, it's actually it's out of my comfort zone. But I'm learning to receive. I'm learning to understand that God has used me, and he continues to use me in the gifts he's given me, and it's actually been quite difficult to learn and understand that about myself, that I had something to bring, but that's a whole other PowerPoint. Yeah, so I thought I'd just start with a big splash of color, which didn't happen straight away. You know, when we came to New York, I thought I was going to take on the traditional vicar's wife role, and I even did my research. I met with a couple of vicar's wives in England, even a vicar's husband, and got some top tips of, you know, what to not put up with and what to make and what not to make at afternoon teas. So I came to New York really not knowing what was going to happen. I did know I wouldn't have a green card, because the religious worker 2 visa that I was allowed to have from the Department of Homeland Security, meant I could reside, I could support Chris, but I wouldn't be able to earn any money. So from day one, I kind of just floated around. I did all the stuff. I got my kids into school. But before we'd come, I knew I was going to use fiber art. I was already yarn bombing. Now, yarn bombing is the act of wrapping trees and wrapping lampposts in yarn. I'd seen it in England and I'd got hooked. And so I knew I was going to, thank you, I knew I was going to use that. I knew that I didn't have a lot to do. And I thought, as an artist, it would be a great opportunity to kind of explore crochet more, and I knew that there were fences in New York which we just don't have in England. So I'd already decided I was going to put flowers on fences, and I'd got some inspiration. So, you know, from day one, I went to Central Park. I took my crochet hook, bought some yarn from the local yarn store, made a gigantic blue iris, stuck it on the fence, did ask permission, and people started to ask questions like. You know, people started to ask each other, do you know who's doing this? And I started to make friends. I started to get some interest, and I didn't know where it was going to go. I really didn't. And it went in, like, when you introduced us and we're looking at this studio, this is where it's led to. It's led to me being gifted the use of a space by a non-profit that works with adults with special needs, and above the church that we sometimes volunteer in. You know, that's the journey. You just don't know where things are going to lead to. I'm just going to slip through these slides. You know, from day one, these pictures are kind of a year in. I was asked to, you know, to come and teach crochet to people. We were part of L'Arche community in England, and we didn't know whether that would be something we would continue. But the doors started to open in a very small and slow way, which is what it really is, the Innerchange way. You know, we're not church planters. We're not working with huge amounts of people. We are really about developing one-on-one relationships with people. And in a way, that's what crochet does, because it's slow and it has to be one-on-one. So I kind of like to use that as an analogy. This is a group of people that I taught for a year. And the people, so it would be people who would support them. They would come to the center and I would, you know, we would sit for an hour and just do crochet. Some people just made chains, but you know, that was okay. It was the conversations that started. And the opportunities did start to come in. I was trying to work with local women where possible, but I'd also be offered the opportunity to add a piece to a local art show. You know, funding the materials myself. They're relatively, I mean, acrylic yarn is acrylic yarn. It's cheap. You can get it in the local store. So that really was, I was just taking whatever opportunities were coming my way and just making pieces for them. And another thing I was trying to do is to work with local women. We called ourselves the Crafty Ladies of East Harlem. We'd had a similar group in London, and it was just a group of women who wanted to hang out together and, you know, learn cottage industry crafts, felting or anything, you know, origami. You know, one of us would contribute and we'd all gather in a room together once a month, you know, in the shady basement of the church or something. So it was, but that's friendship, women who never used to hang out together. So that kind of thing started to happen. And yeah, I initiated the ideas, but the women kept coming, you know, 2 or 3 would come. And then by the time COVID struck, it was like 15 women. We were meeting every single month together. So I'm really grateful for how that, Chris and I joke, like, I've got more of a social life than Chris. I know more people in a way. And I haven't really done anything intentionally. It's just, I think fiber art, crochet, things like that really do draw people together. It's that classic, you know, sitting around the quilting table, and everybody has a different role to play. And I think it really did attract people. I had people on social media contact me, how can we contribute? And then local moms would say, like, one woman said, I've been stalking you for a year. I found who you were. I needed to be part of this. And some of them are my best friends now. So we just started to decorate the neighborhood together. You know, the symbolism of the butterfly is incredibly important to people in our neighborhood. Undocumented neighbors, migration is beautiful, and we've really taken that as far as we can. And as I found that people wanted to contribute, one of the things is that, you know, like schools and teachers would come and say to me, oh, I really need to, I'd love my students to meet you. So that kind of thing started to happen too. And, you know, using street art in a way to educate people and to inform people. So this is, I didn't want to do like a point, but this is a piece I did on the west side of Manhattan, and it's the Puerto Rican hibiscus. And it actually went up around the time of Hurricane Maria. So the community used it as a way to raise funds to send back to Puerto Rico to help families that they knew there. So there's so many ways that fiber art can be used. And I think what I'm most grateful for is the fact that, you know, I keep saying this, but like unintentionally, I've managed to get a really good relationship with the Parks Department, which then opens up funding that I can apply for. I can apply for funding to then work with local women, and that we all get paid, you know, above minimum wage to make small pieces for a much larger mural. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now as well, because some women are unable to earn anything. So I've been able to, you know, I can apply for the funding, and then we can all earn something together. This is my family. This is me. We're standing in front of the first piece I ever did that some people thought was a butterfly. Some people didn't really get it, and it didn't really matter. They were just really interested from day one. Like, why would you put crochet on a fence? But that's the thing. It stops you in your tracks and it makes you smile. Some people. And the candid pictures are always my favorite when you come across people. And that's the thing, it doesn't just affect the women who want to get involved, it affects everybody. It's infectious. And that's what Chris and I just continue to be stunned at, really. People have sent me messages over the years, you know, saying things like, I was having a really hard day and I walked past one of your pieces and like, it really spoke to me. People who said they send their children to certain schools because they see the art on the walls. And one did a huge mural with some of the women in the neighborhood, and we put it opposite a hospice in East Harlem. You could see it from the Metro North. And when I took it down, I had a message which was very difficult to read. A woman said, "Why did you take it down? My friend is in there extremely ill. I wheel him up to the window every day to see it, and this is the lifeline." And I said, "I'm sorry, the Parks Department told me I have to take it down, but I said, I promise I'm going to do another one." And these stories, they choke me, because the impact that, you know, this group of women who work together to, you know, not really knowing, and groups of students have helped on things, not really knowing what the impact on people's lives would be. Art speaks to people. It really, really does. It doesn't have to be a fancy painting. It can be some crochet on a fence. And like, who would have thought? You know, I used to put things around trees, and like now we're helping people get through terminal illness. The opportunities just, you know, they keep coming, and I haven't put a lot of pictures of people in because I need to get permission from people, but it's super important that I'm working together with other people, and that was something that's part of my journey as an artist. A couple of years ago, I could have quite happily just sat in the studio all on my own, done crochet and put it on a fence. But it's so important that I continue to do these projects with other people, all sorts of people from the local seminary, from the precinct, from the high school, women, from mothers from the local school, you know, all sorts of people from the internet who just send me stuff. I ask for 200 hats, I get 200 hats sent to me in the mail to give to the local homeless community. This is the mural that was opposite the hospice. And I still can't believe that I did it. You know, all the small flowers were made by local women, and I make the large flowers. Took 3 months to make, and this is what the residents of the hospice woke up to see every day. And I'm going to do another one. I've just applied for funding for it. It will be 50% bigger. It will take 3 months to make, and it will give a wage to at least 4 local people and myself. And you know, and I can't tell you what the subject of it is because it's top secret. But it's going to be really beautiful and really special. And if I could have ever dreamt that I would get to make beautiful things that make people smile, and that's kind of as basic as it is, really. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. And things that make my husband smile as well, for photo opportunity. This is a group of women. We made, I'm going to show you a slide of something that we made, and I'm going to leave it there. We met together once a week at the back of a Mexican deli before it shut down, actually. And we made orange squares, and it was my idea, but I said, listen, I'm not going to do it unless you guys want to do it too. We're going to do this together. And we had conversations, and people brought their friends, and there were kids there, and it took some time. And but we all had this end goal of the school had asked us to make it. The principal said, this is a very symbolic thing I want you to make. It represents a lot of undocumented migrants and families in the school. Would you do it? And I said, give me 3 or 4 months and I'll do it. And we did it. We met every single week to do. Some people made one very dodgy orange square. Some people made circles that we made into squares. You know, we would go to local festivals, and we would take orange yarn and crochet hooks and just ask people to make. It was all top secret. Not telling you what we're making, just make an orange square. Some people made 50, and then we sewed it together. And for quite a while. And the principal keeps saying to me, when are you bringing the orange butterfly back? When are you bringing the monarch back? And I will. I'm just going to, I'll probably put up later in the year. It needs a wash. But I think this was the best ever. It still blows us away. And all those women took their families to see it, and they say, I made this. I made this with my women. It transforms us. It really does. It's transformed me. It's transformed Chris. And we just didn't know that this is where moving to East Harlem would lead. And we don't know where it's going to lead to next. But we're so grateful for the people that we get to work with, and the stories we get to tell, and the bragging that Chris gets to do, which makes me hugely uncomfortable. But it's not about me. And that's another journey. You know, ego has no place in this. This is just about just doing what's right in front of you. And yeah, there's a lot of fences to cover in Manhattan. So that's all from me.
So it's just great that it's the urban art that you can take down and put in your washing machine and recycle and put up somewhere else. Isn't it cool? Right, I think we're going to stop sharing. Go back to gallery view.
If you didn't have time to write down that website, it is IC, which is for Innerchange, East Harlem, .novo.org, but I will also be sending that out in the weekly Century so that you can have that right in front of you. You can just click the link. I think it's been in the past weekly Centuries as well. Their names have been hyperlinked, so you can connect with them there. Does that have, you guys are on mute, by the way, Chris and Naomi. Does it have like a link? Do you guys have a newsletter? Is there a way to give? Like, are all of those things on that web page there?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got a way to give. Click on a button at the bottom, and we will hear about you and send you a prayer letter. You can also email us, and Laurel's got our emails.
I do.
So please be in touch. We're quite new to America, so we don't have a lot of friends on this side of the Atlantic. So
Chris doesn't have friends.
No, you're doing all of that. Yeah.
Oh, now you do, both of you.
Well, you are welcome to unmute yourselves now. You don't have to stay muted now. It just makes it a little easier when they're doing the presentation. They would love to hear your questions or some thoughts, or, you know, I got a little weepy with the butterfly presentation.
Yeah.
But by all means, we've still got some time before we switch over to get ready for worship, and go for it.
So Naomi is going to have to guide me and you and Linda and who else crochets in this group here. I am quite the avid crocheter. I have seen your yarn bombs on Facebook shared throughout groups that I'm in. And I didn't really look you up or anything. I just smiled and kept crocheting my own pieces. But now it's really, really neat because now we have a little connection. And honestly, Naomi, I would like to talk to you another time about these things as well, because I've been wanting to yarn bomb, but I'm a single mother of 3 and I work part-time for Central and I just had hip surgery. So it's really hard for me to find time to do extra crochet, but I kind of want to know how you were able to go beyond just crocheting for yourself, you know?
With 4-year-old twins, no less.
Yes.
Are they 5? No, they're older than 4 because Timmy's 4 and they're older than Timmy. Yeah.
4.5,
Yeah.
I have a 6-year-old. She's almost like twins, but
and so Sarah, absolutely. So Sarah runs our faith formation, both for adults and for children. And so I'll definitely connect you with her, and she's got a gift for crochet. And after COVID, we would love to get them to come up and meet us in person. But for now, we are so thankful for Zoom and the stories that you get to share. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Yeah, it amazes me.
Oh, say your name before you speak. Sorry. Say your name.
This is Joe, not just Wise Guy. But the way that you took on the barriers in that urban area is so amazing, and a way to turn something that typically is covered with barbed wire or angled, fencing to make it so that people can't cross it, to make it look inviting. It's one of the things that really I found to be offensive, and not trying to use a pun, but it was about that city, that there are fences everywhere. And it amazed me as I went, not just in, the industrial areas, but in the housing areas, there are fences between everything. So I am just so impressed that you took that as a challenge to turn it into something beautiful instead of something that was offensive. In my work, when I went down there, I found it really intrusive onto the local culture. So I am really looking forward to you coming and seeing a part of New York that, if there's a fence, it normally is holding in livestock. No, thank you for sharing that all with us. That is lovely work.
Yeah, I think coming to New York, we don't have fences like that in England, so that's why I jumped right on it. And I think people in New York, they just don't realize that other places don't have chain link fences, especially 12-foot high around schools that are supposed to protect the children. But we didn't grow up with that. But then we also grew up with green fields, so in suburbia. But this fence where the butterfly is, and I use it all the time. This one fence. After about a year in, I think the whole yard was closed for renovation for 2 years, and the children didn't get to go out for recess for 2 years. And I remember thinking, because I would continue to put work up. And I remember thinking, surely it will open in September, surely after Christmas, and it just kept opening. And it was, I continued to use the fence because almost to distract us from what we were still seeing which was heartbreaking. But now when the kids are in for recess, their fingers come through the yarn, they all climb, and you can see their little fingers all the way up. It's really cute. Because I walk past all the time.
I love that.
On a related theme, I said I was working with seniors. We found a building that's 22 floors high, and during the spring of 2019, they decided to shrink wrap it with, put scaffolding up. That's the other thing that New York City has scaffolding forever. And they shrunk wrapped these seniors. There were 3 in this building. They had no outdoor seating anymore. They were behind these screens. No view out of their windows. So we decided to take them on a little journey where they could turn the local playground that was normally dominated by children, and we cornered it and had a bit for them that was their outdoor seating. and we brought music and food and fun and games and dominoes, and we just mixed it all up so that we had a lot more emphasis on getting out of that building. But that's the idea of people just get quarantined before it's even COVID pandemic time, behind fences and behind scaffolding, and nobody seems to care about living life to the full as a 78-year-old in public housing.
I recall being told that there's 97.5% of New York State is not considered a city, and how little the area where you live interacts with the rest of the state, not only the area, and how people who are born there stay there, and find it to be a wonderful, loving home and atmosphere and culture because of what they've turned it into. And I am just so thrilled to see you turning that into bright, vibrant colors and creatures that seem to come off of the fence. So that is an absolutely outstanding ministry of love. Thank you for sharing it with us. And I'm sure you do something nice with the church as well.
I love the employment program piece. For me, I have a background in working in employment programming and seeing how much getting a paycheck can change someone's mental health, can change someone's, they will stand up taller, they will be prouder, it just changes how you feel about yourself, how you can provide for your family. And so being able to work with these women and get them paychecks through these grant programs is just amazing. And so we have a grant program here at Central. I know we granted you some funds through for some programming that you were doing during COVID with the elderly, but that might be something that we can definitely talk about in the future. I love those holistic programs that you're working on. And so we're so thankful to get to meet you and get to talk more about your programs. And
a lot of the work I do is voluntary. There's no funding for it. So there's also that, that reckless side of street art where,
I love it.
I work with a group of local women, and we're always working on something, whether it's a sign or, I can't remember what we just did. Oh, we just did Believe. We all took a letter each. Believe. So, that's the yarn bombing, the kind of the guerrilla knitting, putting it up when nobody's looking. There's no money in that. But then as soon as I get a commission or I can apply for a grant, that's when the outsourcing happens. Because, I only need a certain amount. So we try and, it's not even that I only need a certain amount. It's more that whether we're trying to do it quickly, so I haven't got the time to do all of it myself, or it just feels like this is supposed to be shared. If I can outsource kind of 200 leaves, that's a great opportunity for one person to earn, a couple of $100 or whatever that works out to be. So it just feels better. That's at the end of the day, it's better for me to be working in collaboration with others, and we're all sharing. It's not just one artist kind of trying to make her have a successful career. It's kind of, that's why it's sometimes really hard for me to put it into words. Am I trying to build my portfolio, my reputation? And I've tried to come away from that as often as possible and try to sort of flip it on its head and be kind of upside down. And it's hard to explain that to people sometimes because they're like, yeah, but then you're still trying to raise support for what you do. I'm like, yeah, but it's very, it's more than just, it's about us all working together. It's about, and it means more to people to see a community piece of art on the fence than just an individual artist's work on the fence. When people in the neighborhood know it's been made by local people, it's transformative, and means much, much more. I hope that was clear. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. We do have time for one, maybe two more questions.
There was a question in the chat. People must have asked, this is the question, I'll read it if you want.
Nicely done. And I told people to do that.
Yeah. People must have asked you what motivated you to come here to do this. How receptive were they about your witness? It's a really good question, because it has crossed our minds many times. Why Anglo-British people in East Harlem, of all places, doing what they're doing? And it's kept us humble. But we did get invited here by a church that had been established out of the public housing. They invited us in counterintuitively, and we loved them and they loved us. And then we managed to transition to a community which is called Innerchange in the same neighborhood. So the church is our partner. We've got multiple partners in the neighborhood, informal small p partners. And now we feel like we're still earning our right to be here. And so we're trying to still love on people so that we don't overwhelm people with a sense of our importance or why we should be here. We're trying to just learn how to take our time.
Yeah. I mean, I was just going to say, I think it for some of the people that I come into contact with, they haven't seen people do it the way we've done it before, because I say we're not running a church anymore. That's not the way we're doing it. So it's been quite important, because Chris and I both have very part-time jobs working with adults with special needs, and it's been really important to be able to say that we also work. We might earn a low salary, but everybody in our neighborhood works. You can't just be a missionary who's like magically supported from, you know, outside of the neighborhood. You have to work. And so it's been really important that they've never really seen it done that way before. We don't run a church. We don't just kind of show up in East Harlem and give out food and clothes to the poor. We're living alongside people. We're literally the slow rhythms, the slow everyday, the mutual vulnerability. You know, it's like being a good neighbor, but kind of, you know, they also know that we've chosen to come to East Harlem to do this. We didn't just find ourselves there. We intentionally came. We're bringing up our 4 children in a neighborhood that's very different to where we're from. We're relocators. So I think it brings up a lot of questions sometimes, but mainly from my women friends, they just say, we love what you do and we love that you're here. It doesn't really, it's a very slow thing, you know, but they seem to enjoy our company, and it's mutual. It really is.